Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA draft and the Motor City Cruise.
And guys, if you're tuning in live first, thank you. We always appreciate that. If you got any questions, as always, throw them into the live chat there on YouTube. Leave us a like, subscribe, all that usual stuff. It helps us out, so we appreciate it. But Big Cheese says we're nearly back. We are. We got Pistons basketball. Finally, even though it's just the preseason. But Blake, I wanted to give you a shout out because one thing that the listeners didn't know, because we didn't talk about it, well, you didn't talk about it with Sean last week, was that was actually the 50th episode. So the first episode that I missed, you kind of brought home, you landed the boat, I guess, so to speak. You brought it up to the dock, landed it for the 50th episode. It was a great episode. You guys did awesome last week. I had so much fun listening to it. So I want to give you the congratulations for getting to take the victory lap on that.
Hey, congrats to you as well. 50 episodes is pretty crazy, especially weekly show. This is 51, so next year 52 will be the year. So we can celebrate it a little bit more. And shout out to Sean for coming on. It was a great episode. We obviously miss US, but Sean was fresh off of going to media day and everything, so had some cool little tidbits and everything. And yeah, now we have some games to talk about, and we have 50 whole episodes behind us. So here's the 50 more.
Exactly. We'll have to do something pretty big for the 100th. But, Sean, he very admirably overfilled my very small shoes that I left for him. So he was great. I loved hearing all the media day insight that he had. It was really cool to hear. And just, before we get into the questions here, because we actually did get quite a bit pre-submitted, Pistons basketball's back, like Big Cheese says. We're just beyond actually trying to analyze it. Just the fan reaction. How excited are you to finally be coming up here on the NBA season?
It's exciting. I mean, I try to temper everything with preseason, but especially when you're talking about it, pretty much every day. We're on this show every week, but we're talking about the Pistons in some way, shape, or form once a day. So we're doing a ton of speculating. So it's nice to finally see some of the new players in a Pistons uniform, see what JB Bickerstaff was thinking in terms of starting lineups and rotations, not taking really anything set in stone because there are some injuries and things can change, probably trying out a bunch of different things. But it's fun to finally see them back in action, and hopefully here's to a better year. And as a Michigan State grad, I did enjoy seeing them play at the Breslin and seeing Devin Booker wear the Michigan State stuff and everything. That was pretty cool.
Wes, broadcast,
yeah, you probably didn't feel the same exact way, but it was a cool crossover.
I mean, look, I'm a Michigan fan, but how could you not like Tom Izzo and Michigan State basketball? They've been so good for so long. It's just one of those like incredible runs that seems to keep going on and on and on. And you just got to tip your cap to it. Like, yeah, I root for Tom Izzo. That's awesome.
Yeah, my father-in-law has always said he wanted to go to a Michigan State game at the Breslin. He hadn't been. So my wife and I got him tickets last year for his birthday, and we ended up going to the last game of the season, and it was Steven Izzo's senior night. So, I mean, we saw like the senior night for like all the other guys, but of course the Steven Izzo one was a little bit special, and it was cool because when I bought those tickets, I didn't even think about it. And then it was pretty emotional, just like cool story all around. So yeah, huge Izzo guy. Love Michigan State. I mean, it's cool now that Ishbia owns the Suns. I could see that Suns Pistons crossover happening at the Breslin almost every preseason. So yeah, like, I don't know. I thought it was really cool seeing Cade bring the ball up on the Spartan floor as well. That was fun for me.
Yeah, it was super cool. And I hope you're right. I hope they do it every year. Camille, what's up? He says, hi. Thanks for joining in. We appreciate you, man. Before we get into the questions, I had one question that I wanted to ask you, and I want to preface it by saying we are recording this before the Pistons play their third preseason game here on Friday night. So that'll be will be played at 10 p.m. or maybe 11 p.m. Eastern. We weren't going to stay up that late to record after it. It is just the preseason after all. So we'll leave that game aside because we won't have watched it. What is like your one big overall takeaway so far from the games that we've seen, if you had to pick one?
If I had to pick one, and I feel like it's the easy one, but just Jaden Ivey has looked really, really good. And I think it's all, he's looked good in ways that we knew he was capable of, but it just looks like something's different. He's a little more confident, maybe is the word. And maybe it's just the context he's playing around him and a new system with a new coach and everything. But I think he's been playing super aggressive, getting the ball in motion more often than not, and running the floor, getting to the hoop really well. Again, it's preseason, it's not perfect, but I think Jaden Ivey has looked incredible and has been the star of the preseason through 2 games, if you can attribute that to anyone.
He absolutely has. He's been on heater for both games. He started getting in that Suns game some the pull-up jumpers going, and that was like, whoa, okay, if he's going to start
he's
making
been trying
those.
the floater too. It hasn't really been like hitting that well, but he's been trying it.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'd say the big takeaway for me, kind of like, I guess, building off of that, because it's related, even though it's not Jaden Ivey. It's just the offense that they've been running has been very focused on drive and kick. Outside of Cade initiating that first action, there's been a lot of motion, a lot of getting guys the ball on the move, which is great to see. And then, like I said, just relying on drive and kick kind of actions and playing out of that. And we mentioned it on the Pistons Pulse this week as well, but I mean, that was kind of the offense we were expecting to see when Monty Williams took over. And now we are seeing it now. We are seeing that ball not sticking too much. No one's really pounding it too much. And it's, they're playing hot potato. They're great ball movement. And it's creating a lot of lanes, a lot of opportunities for guys that aren't just Jaden Ivey, right, to attack. We've seen some good stuff out of Ron Holland, even in the half court. And, that's not to say that he's been perfect in half court settings, but he has popped a couple of times here and there. And in most of those, it's because of all of this movement on offense. So I think that has been really great to see, in my opinion. That's what stood out to me the most.
Yeah, and what just off that, when I was at the Motor City Cruise Open tryout, some of the drills they had the guys doing it, and this isn't 1-to-1 for the Pistons and everything, but they just were running like a simple set to get the ball in motion, and then it was just like, okay, we're playing basketball, we're hooping from there. Guys were expected to drive and kick and everything like that. The action was really to get your like shooters in the right spot. And I think even like Malik Beasley, even though he was standing in the corner at times, I think there was a lot of off-ball movement like on the perimeter as well to help create those kickouts and like easy opportunities and get open. So I hope that's something that translates into the season. I mean, I don't see any reason that it wouldn't. But yeah, the energy has been pretty good. It's not a full roster with Asar Thompson and Tobias Harris, and I think Bobby Clemens missing too. But yeah, from the guys that are out there, I think you're seeing a little bit of the vision. And I mean, we shouldn't put a ton of stock into it yet until it counts, but it's been a positive sign for sure.
And I will just say quickly, like, part of this is having vets now that know what they are good at and know what their roles are. Like, you're not seeing Malik Beasley put his head down and try to get to the rim on every possession, right? He's spacing the floor. He's hunting for his shots. Tim Hardaway Jr. is doing the same thing. Presumably so will Tobias Harris. So has been Simone Fontecchio. It's letting the young guys fill in other gaps where we want them to fill. But because we don't have vets that are trying to, in these first 2 preseason games, at least overstep their role and the things that they're already really good at and what they're brought in for, it's allowed more of this natural flow and motion, because it just looks like guys are working together better. And part of that is everyone knowing what the heck they want to do.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see Tobias Harris get added to the equation. It came out that he had COVID and he's working his way back from that. I'm not sure if he's playing tonight when they're in Phoenix, but maybe we'll see a little bit of him in preseason. If not, if it waits till the regular season, that's fine. But I think he'll only help like with some of those things that we've already seen improvements on with the vets that we have seen on the floor already.
So let's jump right into this one from our guy Rames in the DBB comments. Says, what do you guys make of what we've seen from Malik Beasley so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Pistons haven't really had a shooter like him in some time that I can remember. I mean, the only one that I can think of in recent years is like Bogdanovich, and he wasn't the type of player that Beasley was. I mean, Beasley is really lethal from three. Some nights it'll hit more often than not, but I think he's looked really good. One thing I saw it in the comments somewhere, but he actually looked like he's providing a bit of an effort on defense too. He's definitely not known for his work as a defender, but I think as long as you have that effort, just trying to make things difficult for the opponent, I think that'll help everything. But yeah, he's been great. And even like, he's just not a catch and shoot guy. He's driven it a little bit too. It's not something you want him to do all the time or want him to need to do all the time. But I think he's great. And I don't know. I think there could be situations where he could start, and even if he doesn't start, I think he's going to have a huge role on this team.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's going to have a massive role as well. I'm really excited to watch it. I'm not sure that the Pistons have had a spark plug like this, whether
Right.
as a starter or a guy coming off the bench. I mean, just you look at the way he was trash talking Milwaukee in preseason game one. He was playing with energy on defense, even though he was making some mistakes. I thought that his effort put him close to like a neutral level, which was awesome. Like if we're gonna get that out of Malik Beasley, that's huge. And then obviously, like you said, the type of shooter that he is, he really can catch fire quick. It's not just that it's a really good shot, but it's a really fast shot, and his feet are incredibly efficient. So when he catches that ball, I mean, I'm sure that the count to whenever ball hits hands to ball leaves hands is incredibly small. Derek, thank you, appreciate you, man. He says that they missed me last week.
We
I mean,
did.
again, I don't know, guys. Sean, I think, deserves more credit. He more than filled in. He was a net positive as compared to if I were there instead of
Oh,
him.
come
I
on.
think.
Don't,
Come
no,
on, the
don't say that.
media day insights he had, those were awesome. Those were incredible. That was so fun to listen to while I was flying from DC on a work trip. I was having a great time, so I can't be the only one. But anyway, with Malik Beasley, just his ability to catch fire, and there's really no stopping the jump shot when he's got it going, unless you're really going to play up on him and not even really let him catch the ball cleanly at all, which is very difficult to do. So yeah, I'm very encouraged by what we've seen. I think it should be very fun. If anything else, he's going to be a good trade asset when it comes to the trade deadline. But if he keeps playing like that, I mean, maybe the Pistons are the team that needs to just give him another contract next offseason. If these spark plug type roles are very valuable and very valued around the league. So if he can be that vet to this team, he's only what, 27, 28. Yeah, I mean, maybe he could definitely work his way into being a must keep.
Yeah, and there's I mean, all the talk about what Fred Vinson can potentially do for the young players in developing their jump shot. Like Beasley can help too, because there aren't a ton of shooters like him around. So I mean, just working with the Jaden Ivies, Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, not like he's the same player as any of those guys, but I think he can probably help out a bit too, just because of what we've seen from him in the league. And now, yeah, like just Football Academy in Australia is saying like his effort, he seems like he wants to be here. Everything we've read and what we've seen on the court so far seems that is the case. So if that's the case, like, I'm sure he'll take some of those young guys under his wing as well and do what he can to help them out.
Yeah, and he's got what? If he's 27, he probably has a max of like 2 short contracts left that could be large, like rather large, more than just the minimum. So yeah, I mean, I bet we've got a very motivated Malik Beasley this season, and I think that's a really exciting thing. Keeping along these lines, though, Blue Dog asked us this. He said, in Sacramento, we saw how roster construction and coaching allowed their Malik, so that being Malik Monk, to take a leap forward as a playmaker. He wants to know if our lack of a true backup point guard will allow for our Malik Beasley, to take a similar leap.
I don't know if Malik Beasley is really going to be in a situation where he has to do everything that Malik Monk did for the Kings. And I don't think, just because of where Beasley is in his career, I don't know if he's necessarily still has the runway to turn into what Malik Monk is. I think we kind of know what Malik Beasley is, but if we're asking this about like Jaden Ivey, for example, I could see more of that being the case. I mean, Ivey is still young. He's a huge question mark. He's looked great so far in the preseason, but yeah, if Ivey, and we've seen a ton of the staggering so far that we thought we might see, playing Cade and Ivey next to each other and then giving Ivey some time to run the second unit as well. So if that continues into the regular season, we could see a ton of usage from Jaden Ivey, which could go really well for a potential breakout for him. Or, I mean, there's always the possibility that it could go the other way too. But with Malik Beasley, I see him more as the guy who's playing a certain role on this team, as opposed to coming in here and trying to become a different player to potentially break out and be a guy that a team is comfortable giving like a Malik Monk contract to.
Yeah, I think the answer to this, like you said, it just comes down to opportunity. Maybe if Malik Beasley was the guy that the Pistons were going to be playing in that backup point guard role, like we kind of envision and have seen them doing with Jaden Ivey, where he starts at the 2, and then when Cade sits, he just shifts over, or vice versa. If Jaden comes out, then he'll come in for Cade later on. If that were Malik Beasley in that role, I'm sure maybe he could take that kind of leap. He is only in his late 20s. It's not like he's in his mid 30s at this point. So, there are still evolutions to Malik Beasley as a basketball player that we will see. But I'm with you. I don't think that he's going to get the opportunity to do this as a playmaker. In fact, I'd say if Jaden Ivey really struggles in this type of role, like if he doesn't take a leap that we're all kind of sort of expecting that he'll be able to make, especially as a playmaker, to be able to run the show as a backup point guard for some minutes, I would almost expect Marcus Sasser to get the next shot at that specific role rather than handing the ball over to Malik Beasley. And if we could build on this a little bit even further, we saw in I believe it was the second half of the Suns game, when there were minutes without Cade on the floor, but with Jaden Ivey and Tim Hardaway Jr. Tim Hardaway Jr. did take a few initiation sets. He did bring the ball up a couple of times to kind of spell Jaden Ivey and get the pressure off of him that the Suns were putting on him. So even now, even with that, you might look at this roster and say, in terms of a secondary or not secondary, a primary playmaker for a bench unit, not only is Malik Beasley behind Jaden Ivey, but he's also behind Marcus Sasser and probably Tim Hardaway Jr. in a pinch. So, I mean, could Malik Beasley take a leap as a player in general? Yeah, possibly. I think if he becomes a neutral defender for the entire season, that's a big time leap for him. That'll improve or really heighten the level of contract he's going to get next offseason. But in terms of playmaking, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that there's the opportunity.
Yeah, I think you just don't want him to be a ball stopper, and we haven't seen him be that. I mean, you just want him to to keep the ball moving if he doesn't have a clean look. But I don't think you really, like you said, want him to be a true primary, or I mean, maybe even secondary initiator, depending on who is on the floor with him. But that said, I mean, everything we've seen so far has shown us that all he'll bring is a positive, but I think it's more in a specific role for this team. And that really just fits who I think he is as a player.
All right, Big Cheese just asked this one in the live comments. This is a fun one, so I just wanted to jump right into it and not wait. He says, true or false, Cade's biggest challenge this year is if he can give start level production playing more off the ball. He says heliocentric offense is dying. Teams realize it's untenable and unsustainable to long-term competitive success. So true or false, Cade needs to be a star off the ball this year, and that's his biggest question.
Man, this is an interesting one. I would say it's a big question, but I think I'm leaning false just because I think Cade is going to have the ball in his hands more often than not, especially because we don't have that clear lead ball handler besides Cade. So I think it's false. I mean, I agree with Big Cheese here. Heliocentric offense is dying. Like we saw what the Mavericks did last year with Luka and Kyrie, but that's sort of, I mean, you're not going to have a backcourt like that more often than not. So I don't know. I think Cade can pop out, break out with being that like lead ball handler, as opposed to like we want to see him look good off the ball as well. But I think the majority of what we're looking for is still on ball reps.
Yeah, and I think so. I agree. I'd also say false, mostly because I don't really question Cade's ability to play off ball at this point. I mean, his catch and shoot numbers have always been pretty good, especially relative to his off the dribble three numbers. So I'm not too worried about it. But I do think it's important to split heliocentric as a concept from simply having a lead ball handler. There's a pretty big gap between having a point guard who consistently 9 times out of 10 brings the ball up and initiates action versus a heliocentric style offense, as you can envision what the Mavericks did, obviously before they added Kyrie Irving, and even before that, what the Rockets did when they had James Harden for that period. And that was that every single action that actually is run is to put one single player in a decision-making position. So 90% of all the plays that we're running, if this were going to be a heliocentric style offense, is to put Cade in a position to either shoot or pass to get an assist, or etc. You want to put that main hub into actionable decision spots. Okay, so if you just have a lead ball handler, a guy who is your quote unquote point guard, that's very normal, even like looking historically, but it's also pretty normal around the league. You don't have too many situations where there are legitimately multiple initiators. And those initiators would be your lead ball handlers, like you said, Blake. But in terms of a heliocentric offense, that's a little different. That's different than just saying that, well, that guy, possessed the ball for 75 or 80% of the time when he's on the court. Like that's a little different. You'd need that number to be up real high, really, really high, in order to have the heliocentric argument. So, I think that those two things are kind of merging together right now, at least in conversations that I've seen and been a part of. And I don't necessarily think that they should. There's a difference between a point guard or a lead ball handler, lead initiator, and then a heliocentric offense. Like you could even say Jokic in Denver. That's not heliocentric. You've got Jamal Murray. He initiates plenty, right? That's not everything going through Jokic. So I think those are two good things to split.
Yeah, and I think what helps is what you mentioned. Like Cade has looked good off the ball as well. So I don't think we really need to worry if he is in those scenarios. But I just think what we're going to see more often than not is him in that initiator role. And if not, you're probably drawing something up for him. And he can be okay off the ball. If he's not like like he doesn't need to be that primary initiator all the time to generate offense and make things happen. I think playmaking is one of his top skills. So as long as he's put in those positions, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, if you want a shorthand to like split those two concepts, right? Just having a point guard or a lead ball handler, you might say that the offense starts with Cade Cunningham. And that is true, okay? If you had a heliocentric situation, you might say that the offense runs through Cade Cunningham. And those are two very different things.
Or it ends with him.
Or it ends with him too. Yeah, that could be another way to put it as well. I like that. It could either start with him or it could end with him. And those are your two options. I like that. That was good. Let's jump to this one. This is from C. Woj Put in the DBB comments. It says, how much does it concern you that the Pistons have suffered quote unquote dramatic malaises similar to much of what we saw last year in both of the preseason games? So in this question, he's referring to that big run that the Bucks went on in the first quarter and that the Suns went on in the second quarter. I think they had like an 18-0 run at that point, if I'm remembering right. It might have been in the third. I'm not entirely clear on that, but there was a run. So what do you think about those two instances?
It's a little concerning. I mean, the Bucks one concerned me a little bit more just because time and time again, last season, we saw the other team go on a run right out of the gate, and then you're just in a hole already and trying to work your way out of it. Of course, against the Bucks, they did that, grain of salt, because it was preseason. But I think it'll be important, maybe not to get out on hot starts, but just to not dig yourself into a hole right off the gate. I mean, Cade as a player, we've seen him start off games a little bit slow, and even for the full first half, and then he really like comes out firing in the second half. So I think some nights that might just be how it is for him. But I think and I'm bringing up like when Tobias Harris comes up, a lot of like things will happen, and I don't think he's a one like fix to all your problems. But I think having a veteran like that who can score for you, and if you have a shooter like Malik Beasley starting, he can help as well. But I think having some of those veterans who can help calm you down and also go get a bucket will help. Unfortunately, we won't see how that is until the roster is at full strength, which it might never be. Guys are going in and out all the time. But I think Tobias specifically can definitely help with this. And once the regular season play starts, I feel like the first quarter, like the first shift until whenever they make their first sub, we'll learn a lot from that, because I think letting the other team get out on a run last year was a huge problem. And when you have such a young team, it's hard to get out of that. So hopefully they're not in those situations as much this year. I don't think they will be because of the personnel they brought in, but you never know. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for once the regular season starts.
I'd echo all of that. And then I'd also just add that the one that happened against the Suns, I think in particular, I don't really care too much about. I mean, KD just got hot. He couldn't miss. There was some halfway decent defense being played on him, and he just couldn't miss. The Bucks one
couldn't miss that first run too, though. Like,
yeah, but the defense being played against them was really bad.
Yes, you're right.
So I think if I had to pick one to be more worried about, it would be the Bucks one, just because of how the run happened, more so than the Suns one. But it is worth mentioning that both the Bucks and the Suns are good basketball teams. They have stars, and those stars played in the preseason game against the Pistons. I mean, we know that the Pistons aren't going to be a championship contender this year. So the fact that they gave up some big runs to two other championship contenders, maybe you could just say that was kind of expected and not too big of a deal. So I'm with you. Something to keep an eye on. Focus more, I guess, on like why the run is happening. If a guy's just hot, Let's do this one because I thought this one was pretty fun. This is from Tony Buckets. It says, which Pistons dropping 50 this season? Who's your pick? If someone's going to drop 50, who is it?
Is Cade on the table?
Yeah, but
It's the easy answer. So I think it would be Cade, but if I have to pick someone else, you know what? Screw it. I think Malik Beasley could do it. Like I could see him a night where he just doesn't
I like
miss
that one. Yeah.
unconscious from three. And hey, if he's hunting like a single game 3-point record, or if he gets to like 25 quickly with a lot of time to go, I could see the team wanting to feed him. And on top of that, like I just trust him to make shots. If he's only hunting threes, the other team will probably do whatever they can to take that away from him. But we also saw him flash some other things as well. And I mean, the threes weren't really falling. He didn't put up a ton against the Suns, but he had a couple buckets where he drove, and I think there was a mid range and a floater. So he can do some other things too, but if Malik ever gets there, it would only be if he just comes out of the gate with rockets on his arm and just makes a ton of threes, and the team tries to find a way to keep that going.
This is a tougher question than I thought. So Malik Beasley is a really good answer. The thing with Cade is that I think his career high is 43 from last
Yeah,
season.
last
And
year.
I mean, 43 ain't 50. Okay.
Yeah.
But so my initial thought was, Tobias Harris, maybe he's going to have a little bit more of a scoring role this season than he did in Philly. But I think his career high is 39. I just looked that up. Yeah. His career high, I think, is 39, which also notably not 50 points.
Hey,
I'm sticking with my guns. Give me Tobias Harris for it. I think
okay.
maybe he just gets hot, He gets hot, scores 50. It's a one-off. We get excited.
Do you think Ivy could get there? Because he was like the other one I was thinking about besides Cade. Just because he can get to the line and he can score at the hoop. I mean, sometimes it doesn't go down or he goes up when he shouldn't. But if he's doing whatever he wants, getting to the free throw line, like maybe he can get there too. I mean, shoot, like Malachi Flynn did it last year. Like I think Tony Buckets brought up in his comment. So you never know.
Well, so actually part of that was why I was thinking Tobias Harris, because Tobias Harris is halfway decent at getting to the stripe, but he's also a very good shooter. So I think that's kind of like the magic sauce of scoring 50 these days. If you can get to the free throw line and you make a bunch of threes, like that's a pretty good start. So yeah, I mean, if Jaden Ivey gets hot from three one night, I think he had a 40-point game last year, or at least came close to it. So yeah, that's another good name. If it's going to be like an end of the bench guy, like a Malachi Flynn situation, who's your pick?
Sasser.
I
think Sasser, like, who knows what his role is going to be, but hey, if there's some injuries and if he finds himself in a starting role or first guy off the bench a little bit, like he got hot. He killed the Bucks last year. I think he was in like the 20s just on like a couple runs, a couple games. So I could see him getting there. I don't think he'll have the opportunity to do so, but Malachi Flynn did it. So you never know.
I was going to do Sasser too. So in an effort to not be boring, let's go to this question from Uncle Sam. It says, what are you expecting from Tobias Harris this season? So beyond the 50-point game that he's going to have, like what are you expecting from Tobias?
Oh man, honestly, like I'm just expecting him to be who he is. Like he averaged 17.2 points for the Sixers last year, 6.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists. I feel like he just needs to be that guy you can look to get a bucket if it's not falling for Cade or Ivy or whoever else is in the starting lineup right out of the gate. So I feel like I'm comfortable scoring wise somewhere within that, maybe I'll say like 17 to 19 range. Maybe he has some more opportunities on this team, but overall, I think the most important thing with him is just being on the court and like he played in 70 games last year, started all 70. He's played 70 or more the past 3 seasons in a row, and like look through the rest of his career. he's up there. He had 2 seasons with where he played in every game. So I think as long as he can be out there and be that like second guy for the Pistons that you can look to get a bucket, that's what he needs to do. And I think he's more than capable of it. But if I had to put a prediction to where he was scoring, I'd say I think he can get up from where he was with the Sixers. So I'd say maybe average like 18 and a half a game, 5 rebounds, a couple assists.
I'm looking for exactly what he did the past few years with the
Yeah.
Sixers because my like, quote unquote hot take before the season, and I think maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're actually seeing that starting to happen now, is Jaden Ivey very aggressively grabbing that number 2 scorer mantle out of the
Hmm.
hands of Tobias Harris and pushing him back down to that third option, which that's exactly what he was in Philly for a few of those years. So I'm looking for exactly the same thing. Just give me the consistency, the efficiency, and that solid veteran presence that, like you said, if things aren't going well, you can turn to him and he's going to deliver 9 times out of 10. That is the exact type of vet that they haven't had the past few years. And now I think they've got 3 of them between him, Fontecchio, and Malik Beasley. So I'm very excited to, just the stability that offers this very, very young team, I think is going to be incredibly valuable. So just be the Tobias Harris you've been, but be it in Detroit. That is all I want.
Yeah, nothing that pops to the eye or anything, but just that productive player that the team hasn't
Be
always
boring.
had. Yeah, yeah,
Be boring.
100%.
Just be the same guy every single night and play like 75 games and have that
Yeah.
same guy be, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, like you said.
I
Fantastic.
think I think his first quarters are important too because it like if the other team gets out on a run, if it's not falling for Cade, like he can score quickly. I think James Edwards before he went off to cover the Knicks was talking about this on his podcast. Like when Tobias was first in Detroit, there was like a joke that he was gonna have 15 points in the first quarter and end the game with 20 or something like that. I'm
And it was
paraphrasing, of
fairly
course.
accurate.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, of course. 'Cause I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think that would be super beneficial to this team to just have that guy to look to right out of the gate when you're trying to get the matchup, get the feel of the game under you. And like we've seen with Cade, just sometimes he comes on a little bit late, which is okay. But I think Tobias can help fill that gap.
That is such an important point that you just made because young teams get punched in the mouth a lot. A lot. I mean, you just come right off the tip and you get squared up and smacked right in the face by some of these really, there's so much talent in the NBA. So these guys just, to have the vet to then hand the ball to, and he's okay. He's got it. He's been there. He's done that. Like no one's reeling anymore. You get hit in the face, you're backpedaling, and now it's a 20-0 run, like we saw a bunch of times last season. Now though, now you can get it over to Tobias Harris. You can put in Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Simone Fontecchio, and kind of calm the waters a little bit. And I think that is huge.
Yeah, last quick thing I'll say on this, but I think it was 2 seasons ago or maybe 3. I think it might have been Cade's rookie year. I was at a Pistons game against the Suns, and the Suns it was a blowout. Like they got out to a quick run, and they could really like rest their guys in the pretty much the whole second half. And Devin Booker was straight up like signing autographs on the bench in the fourth quarter. Like people were throwing things down to him, and I was like, you just don't get in situations where the guys that teams need to beat you can totally just take second halves off. And I feel like that's happened so many times the past few seasons. And now you might have the personnel intact to where you can at least like keep things close and competitive throughout the whole game, hopefully.
Do you remember back in the day when D Rose was in his first stint with the Bulls, that game where they were beating the Knicks so bad that the Bulls starters on the bench participated in the wave?
Oh my gosh. I don't remember exactly, but I feel like I have probably seen this video across
Oh, it's
Twitter
one of
at
my
some point.
favorite videos. That's what you just reminded me of. Oh,
I'll look that
Davenport,
up
he's off on the
again.
side. He's signing autographs. The game's still going on. It's like, yeah, but you can't top the entire Bulls starting five just up and down
Oh
with
my
the crowd.
gosh.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, let's not let that
Um,
happen.
yeah, like, let's avoid that if we can. Let's go to this one from Camille, asking about that last roster spot. So, do you think that they're going to fill that before the season starts, maybe by trade signing, or do you think they're just going to leave it open?
I am kind of thinking that they're gonna leave it open. I don't know, maybe there's eventually a two-way guy that gets converted to a full roster spot, things like that. But I could see them leaving it open, and I think they're already at the salary floor, so there's nothing really that will hinder it. It just like leaves some flexibility for future trades, and there is still some cap space. So if there is a trade where you're taking on more players than you're sending out, that makes it okay and lets you absorb some money for hopefully some draft capital. So I know we won't know until a potential move happens, but everything that we've seen, just the lack of, I guess, not concern, but just like talk around that final roster spot, I feel like the most likely path is it gets left open at the start, and either we see them bring back more players in a trade, or one of the two-way guys gets converted to a full roster spot on like a non-guaranteed deal or something like that.
That has been my instinct for like the past month, but my gut feeling has changed. I think it's Lamar
Really?
Stevens. He
Oh
got first
yeah,
half
man.
minutes. He got first half minutes against the Suns, and he didn't look bad. The fact that he was getting first half minutes means, I think, to me that he's at least in part in that position, filling in for some amalgamation of the Tobias Harris, Asar Thompson minutes that were out during that game due to injury. They had signed him pretty late, so I think maybe you could chalk game one up into like onboarding, basically getting him up to date with everything going on in the system, making sure he knows all the plays, et cetera, et cetera. But then, yeah, getting first half minutes there against the Suns, that really stood out to me. So I think, plus he's got the Bickerstaff connection, so that's where my gut is going right now.
Yeah, and he's on was he signed to an Exhibit 10, like a training camp
I
deal?
think so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he seems a little like too good for that, so I could see that too. So yeah, but even if they sign him, like maybe they waive Wendell Moore or something like that. Like we've seen him play a bit, but I don't. He was. I think YouTube user brought it up in the comments. Like he was more of a salary dump, so something like that could happen as well. But yeah, you're right. That could definitely be the case.
Let's do this one from Just Football Academy. Says, do you guys think that Cade has been a little quiet this preseason because he's not playing full games? He goes on to say it feels like a little bit like college Cade in this new system where he'd be the go-to in big moments at the end of games, but not necessarily early. So what do you think about Cade kind of having a slower start here to the preseason?
A little bit. I mean, in the game against the Suns, where he was 1 for 6 from the field, he only played 18 and a half minutes, but I mean, he got 8 assists in those 18 minutes. So yeah, I think it's most of it is probably it not mattering at this point. Like we'll definitely see Cade's minutes go up once the regular season kicks off. So and like I've been saying, I think he's more the player to get things going later on in the game. And when wins and losses don't matter and you're in the fourth quarter and you want to give guys some rest, like he doesn't have that opportunity. So yeah, I'm not concerned at all by it. I mean, if you want to look at like the shots he's taking or whatever, but I thought he did a good job on when his shot wasn't falling or he wasn't finding the right look, just facilitating and getting those like 8 dimes. I mean, that's pretty impressive in just 18 minutes.
The only thing I'll add to that is that we were all having the same conversation last preseason. Cade seemed to be deferring a lot, didn't look all that aggressive, wasn't getting a ton of shots up. And then, game one, he goes off against the Miami Heat, puts up more than 30 points, almost that's a game winner. Like, I kind of just think that this is his thing in the preseason because the game doesn't matter. He's just trying to get his guys going, trying to, maybe build up their confidence, build the chemistry, what have you. And then when the lights come on, it's kind of a different Cade Cunningham. And we saw that last preseason. I'm not sure we have any reason to expect that's not also what's going on now. So I'm kind of holding back my Cade Cunningham takes until we start seeing some actual regular season basketball. Do you have anything else to add on that before we jump to another one?
No, same here. I mean, we're definitely like overanalyzing the preseason, but we should and we sort of
Yeah.
need to. So yeah, I think it's definitely like an interesting point of it, but I don't think it's any cause for concern. I mean, if we see the same thing when the regular season kicks off, it's more of a conversation, but I think it's sort of just like a wait and see at this time.
So I'll let you take this one just quickly, because there really aren't any. But Joan81 says, "Are there any updates on Asar Thompson? Will he be okay long term?" I mean, you know as much as I do, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying anything that isn't publicly out there from all the beat writers and everyone who's asking JB, and I don't think Trajan has been available since media day, but I think the update is still Asar is waiting on league approval to go through that clearance from the blood clotting issue he had last year and everything that Trajan and the team, and I think Asar himself as well has said that he feels fine. He's ramped up. I mean, Trajan said that he was cleared for basketball activities back, I think, in one of like the draft availabilities that he was going to be good. So it's just waiting on that league clearance, which I don't really know what that process entails, but I mean, I'm sure because it's a serious issue, has to do some more due diligence. So hopefully he gets cleared sooner rather than later, but also just want to make sure it's all good. So yeah, it's a bit of an unknown. I don't think there's a specific timeline, so have to wait and see with that as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say through the interviews with Bickerstaff, Langdon, others, no one seems all that concerned. So I wouldn't say there's too much worry in general. Let's do this one here. This is from Dylan22. Says, if Cade, Ivy, Duran, Asar, and Holland are all able to continue to succeed together, is it fair to say that the final piece of that puzzle would be a stretch four, probably a younger one to replace Tobias Harris?
Um, this is interesting because I mean, I think Asar specific and Holland, I mean, they both need to take leaps as shooters for this to happen. And I mean, Harris is only on a 2-year deal, so I don't think he's really the long-term solution. But if you could find a guy that's 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", who can stretch the floor and play alongside those guys seamlessly, but just this specific scenario, I feel like it kind of implies that you'd at least have to play Duren and Asar next to each other. I mean, maybe you don't if you still have Simone Fontecchio and Malik Beasley and insert shooter here. But I don't think that you really need to like rush to replace Tobias immediately at first. I mean, he makes a lot of money, so there has to be some teams that will be interested in taking him on, which I don't know. Maybe on an expiring, it makes more sense, but with 2 years, it's a little bit harder. So I think it, gonna hold off on this one because you just need to see how Asar, Holland, and even Ivy look shooting the ball this year because we don't see any signs that Duran's magically gonna like develop a jump shot or anything like that. So it just depends on who's playing next to who. And when you have these concerns, it makes it easier to have a Tobias Harris to insert alongside your young guys.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if all five of those guys are going to hit on their potential and find great success together. I mean, 3 of Ivy, Dern, Asar, or Holland have to be better than league average from 3. So, like, if that happens, then great. They don't need a stretch 4 because they've got one. If it doesn't happen, then I don't know a situation where all 5 of those guys are really gonna like hit their ceiling and find a lot of great sorry, excuse me, success as a 5-man unit. Yeah, so I, like you said, I just, if they hit and they're all going to be great as a group, then you've already got the stretch 4. And if they don't, or possibly a stretch 5, and if they don't, then it's not going to work. So you're moving on anyway. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a tough question in that way. But let's do this one, and we'll close out here. And I'm going to cheat too because I'm going to bring in a couple of other live chat questions that were related to my thoughts on this. But this is from our guy. A fella says, any superlatives from the preseason games so far? And also, funny enough, how many of those might we have been saying last preseason as well? But so for the superlatives, Blake, I've got the biggest surprise, which would be like a positive surprise, the biggest surprise being a negative surprise, and then what that you've seen is the most translatable to the regular season and the least translatable. So why don't we just do these one by one? We'll try to do them as like kind of quick hitters, but what is your biggest good surprise so far of this preseason?
Yeah, I feel like it's not really a huge surprise because we've seen nothing but this happen throughout Malik Beasley's career, but just how effective he is as a shooter. Maybe it's because I'm watching him as on the Pistons, and that was a glaring hole for them, and just seeing what he can bring to the team. Like, you knew he was a good shooter and he's had those like 40% years, but just watching him in a couple games, and I mean specifically the game against Milwaukee, which he probably had a little bit more to get up for there, just like how good he is at what he does, I think really helps this team. And although it was likely, it just surprised me actually seeing it and realizing how much it can help this team.
He's been possibly the most fun Piston to watch through these
Yeah.
2 preseason games. I mean, he's just a firecracker. It is so fun, the energy that he brings. And then you pair that with the fact that he could get hot at any second. Like, yeah, I think that's a great one. He's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest positive surprise has been Isaiah Stewart's role. And maybe this is just a me thing, but I was extremely worried that he was still like in the running for the starting 4 spot. They might like consider pushing Tobias Harris down to the 3 to make that all work. I didn't think, the logic part of my brain was not thinking that that's what was going to happen. It seemed pretty obvious that they set up the roster with explicitly not that in mind. But there's just this little voice in the back of my head that still had me worried that Isaiah Stewart might even like split his time between the 5 and the 4. So I think the biggest like positive surprise for me was that is absolutely not happening. He is the backup center. Well, Bickerstaff said that he might potentially be the starting center. He hasn't decided yet, but regardless, he will be playing center, and like almost bar none, almost nothing else. And I think that is awesome for Isaiah Stewart. I think that's awesome for the Pistons. And that was, a very happy surprise for me.
Yeah, I think the self-awareness element to it
Yep.
is good too. Like how Isaiah Stewart said, that's what he didn't have opportunities to play the 5, and he thinks that's where he'd thrive. And he likes being in the post and fighting for rebounds, everything like that. So I think also just hearing the fact that he thinks that's what he should be doing sort of just makes us all think that we're not crazy after we've been talking about it for so long.
Right. Just Football Academy Australia says he thinks it's Ron Holland and his hustle and productivity. I'll say for me, not a surprise. I think he's been as advertised. I mean, it's kind of rough around the edges, but he's just a super high energy guy, and he plays great in the fast break. Like, that's what we've seen. It's been great.
Yeah, I will say I'm probably moving us along here, but just so I'm not saying a spoiler. My answer for the most translatable to the regular season is Ron Holland's effort and
Oh, I
defensive
love that.
energy. Like, I think, especially as a rookie, like those things are what gets you on the floor and can keep you on the floor. So I think we know, although it's not going to be perfect, he has some things to clean up. I mean, saw a couple like playmaking things and like turnovers from him that he definitely needs to clean up and could get him give him less minutes or get him pulled to the bench. But I think if he continues to provide those just like the defense that he has and just the effort in general, like that's something that gets you on the court as a rookie.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we've been saying it pretty much since the draft. Like, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play this exact role, and it's just super energy guy. He's going to be more of a neutral than a positive on defense because for as many plays as he's going to create, he's going to make some mistakes too. That happens with
Mm-hmm.
19-year-olds. But just guys that are that athletic and play with that level of energy and effort, they tend to find their way out onto the court, and I think that that's going to be in the long run a really good thing for him. I mean, it's not going to be a huge role, right? Maybe 10 minutes or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just hard not to play a guy that plays that hard and has that level of raw talent that he does. I mean, there are going to be nights where
Yeah.
all of it clicks together, and that's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, they're gonna want to give him some runway too, as this a guy you just invested a top 5 pick in, and if he gives you more reasons to give him that runway, I could see it only growing, especially if there are mid-season trades, and you probably want to see him play next to Cade Cunningham at certain points in the game. So, I mean, I think that's a easy skill. Like if we're seeing it in preseason, I think it's something that he just does. We're going to see no matter what the game context is, and it can help him and the Pistons be comfortable with giving him those minutes.
So moving along, my most translatable, it's actually the way that Jaden Ivey is scoring. Not necessarily his actual scoring output, but the shots that he's getting, the frequency that he's getting to the free throw line, the way that he's catching the ball on the move or in rip and go situations more often than he's actually initiating offense or taking high pick and roll reps. I think all of that is extremely translatable. It's actually just what we saw him do at Purdue. And what he did at Purdue was good enough to be the 5th overall pick in that draft. So I think it's really encouraging that Bickerstaff is using him in that way, using him in a way that still gets the ball in his hands, but makes it, quick. He's not probing anymore. It's just get him the ball in a position that's advantageous to him and he can attack. And I think that he's really, really good when he's playing downhill. We saw that his rookie year. We saw that for stretches last season. We saw it a ton at Purdue, and we've seen it through 2 games. So I think that that is extremely translatable. If these are the shots, these are the opportunities he's going to get, I think that it'll be more successful than it is unsuccessful. And I think that that's very translatable. You left us with 2 negatives, though. That's the thing. So we went with the biggest
Ah.
positive surprise to try and open on a high note, Blake. And then you jumped right into the most translatable, which is the good thing as well. So now we're left to say the biggest bad surprise or the least translatable thing
We'll have to
from
find
the
something fun to close
preseason.
it out with.
I mean, you're gonna jump on the grenade that you threw here, so you go
Yeah.
first. You go first.
Okay. Do you want to go biggest surprise that wasn't great or least translatable?
Let's do the surprise.
Okay. My biggest negative surprise was Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, he hasn't shot it well through a couple games. Obviously, not a big sample size, and the games don't matter. But I guess the worry with him is that obviously Dallas was trying to get off his money, and from what we thought, maybe he doesn't have a huge role on this team, but he's gonna play, and hopefully he can be impactful in those minutes. Like hopefully this isn't the point in his career where he just totally falls off a cliff or anything like that. Need more time to know if that's what happens, but I mean, it hasn't looked great so far, so just a bit of a concern, and we'll see how it goes into the season, but not a hot start to what we've seen from Tim Hardaway on the court.
Let me know if this makes it less of a concern for you. But Tim Hardaway's always been extremely streaky. That's kind of been his thing, even going back to his college days, right? Like he'll get hot, and then when he's cold, oh, is he cold?
Like the playoffs last year.
Yeah, like the playoffs last year, exactly. Although I guess we should say that that was unusual because it was a pretty long stretch that he was cold.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, it's 3 games up, 3 games down, and he's just riding a roller coaster all season long. So maybe this is just the down of the roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does make it a little bit better, and you're saying something off 2 preseason games, which I mean, it's hard to say something for sure. You shouldn't really. I guess the only reason I would still be concerned is he's turning 33 this year. He's already played for 10, 11 seasons in the league, so like, is this the point where it just all goes downhill for Tim Hardaway Jr.? And if it is, that's probably okay. There's 1 year on his contract, but at least you hope that he can provide some like impactful minutes for the team this season.
So my biggest negative surprise will not be a surprise at all to you, Blake, because you and I were texting about it during the game. But my biggest negative surprise, the only part of this preseason that made me go, "Oh my God, are you serious?" is what the Milwaukee Bucks did to Jalen Duren. I mean, they for 2.5 quarters picked on him every possession that he was in the game. This wasn't just purely an effort thing on Jalen Duren's part. Almost all of when Damian Lillard was hot in quarter 1 was they were pick and roll so that Lillard could attack Jalen Duren. Duren was playing flat, and Damian Lillard, who is not an incredible athlete anymore, just ran around him over and over and over again. And if Duren tried to step back to stop that, pop the 3. And then you started seeing Bobby Portis trying to isolate Jalen Duren on those 2 possessions in a row on the post. And then when Duren did get a stop on one of those, you know what they did? They gave the ball to Pat Connaughton, got a switch to let him ISO on Jalen Duren on the perimeter. It was every time down when Jalen Duren was in the game that the Bucks went, "I want to score on that guy." And that was unbelievable. I've never seen that before in my life in a preseason game, much less preseason game 1. I mean, part of it's on Duren, right? Because I don't think he had a really positive defensive possession until late in the second quarter, where he had a really nice rotation for a block. I can't remember the guard that was taking it, but he was on the opposite block, read everything perfectly, came over and erased the shot. It was great. You love to see that for him. So like part of it's on him because he didn't have a good possession until then. But oh my Lord, did they target Jalen Duren for 2.5 quarters? I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think the only, to play devil's advocate, what you can take from that is it was probably not a great and maybe even the worst matchup he could have had. Like, I was surprised that we were talking about at certain points when Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis would be on the perimeter and Duren just like didn't do what he needed to do to contest those shots. And those are a couple floor spacing bigs. So like, you're not going to have that rotation of high level floor spacing bigs that he's going to have to deter every game. But yeah, I mean, it was not great, and you have to hope it's just like preseason, but this is a thing in preseason you would like to see some improvement on. But yeah, overall, I thought the positioning and just like anticipation, like something was off there. I hope there's like a fix to it, and because yeah, we just need to see some improvement in that sense.
Yeah, exactly what you said there is why I was so disturbed by it, I guess. It wasn't only that they were, targeting him, right? It was that they were putting him in very specific situations to pick on the very defined at this point weaknesses that we know that he has. He's not an incredible lateral athlete, and he struggles to process what's going on in front of him when he's sitting on the back line on defense. And almost every single action for a good 2.5 quarters of basketball was, let's put Duren in positions where he either has to be a great lateral mover or has to read and react to what's going on in front of him. And it just didn't work for that game. It wasn't necessarily that, he also had to cover Brook Lopez, who could space out. That was part of it, of course, but it was the actions were like perfectly designed to take advantage of these weaknesses. And it was just unbelievable. And this, you guys in the live comments, you might be able to pick out. So Derek Brown says he just doesn't really see Jalen Duren as the future center if he can't shoot threes and also can't defend. Big Cheese asked, did Duren look a bit lost at times to you? I think I just answered that question. It wasn't great in the Suns game either. And then Mr. Jones says, did Duren admitting he wasn't trying on defense last year worry you more? I'd say, yeah, because like we just said, his issues aren't actually effort related. He's got other stuff. But so, yeah, I had that prepped. I promise. I did not read 3 questions about Duren's defense and then bring up the Bucks. I did prepare my biggest negative surprise. It's been stewing in my brain since that game.
Well, not to go away from the defense, but and pile on, but another thing in the Suns game, he had 4 turnovers, like, and a couple
Speaks to processing again, right?
a couple of them were just like lazy offensive fouls. Like one, I think he stuck his foot out on a screen, and another was just like a lazy moving screen. And he can, yes, he's a good like he can handle the ball and he can make plays for a player who plays at his position and size. But another thing we saw last year was those turnovers creep up in some games, and that's something that you just absolutely can't have from a lower usage player like that, or someone who you want to like sometimes use as a hub, but he's not your primary playmaker or anything like that. So that's something, and I think it's something like easy that could be cleaned up, especially the offensive foul things, but it's like, will it is the question. You just don't want to see the turnovers get up that high starting when it counts.
Well, last thing on that subject is those moving screens are additionally impactful. They're extra bad, I guess you'd say, because honestly, his best skill offensively is that he is an incredible screen setter. He's a big dude. He's pretty athletic, and he's great at getting in the way. So to then have some of those possessions, which are usually Duren at his most impactful and in a moving screen, like, have to clean that up because he's a guy you want in screen and roll a ton. And to his credit, I mean, it's not to my memory anyway, I don't think he had a lot of those turnovers last year. I don't think he had an unusually large amount of moving screens, but continually that's going to be something that him as a player, it's important to mitigate because those are his best. That's his best thing. That is his thing. Pick and roll. That's where you want him. So you want him to be really clean in that area as well. Let's close it out on the least translatable. So we end on a negative, as you made sure would happen, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to try to not make this sound that negative because it's somewhat related to a good thing, but I just think Ron Holland stuffing the box score sheet the way he has isn't something that's easily going to translate over. I mean, he had 5 assists, 6 rebounds, a couple steals against Milwaukee, and then 3 rebounds, 4 assists against the Suns. I just don't think he's going to have the runway, and I mean, not as many minutes as he's playing in preseason to be able to do that as well. I don't think he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton just because while his handle develops. And also something I'm sorry, I forget who, it might have been Mr. Jones who brought it up in the chat. Like, he's going to have to be able to knock down shots in some sense as well to stay on the floor, especially if he is playing alongside an Asar Thompson or a Jalen Duren or whatever it is. So if he hasn't made a 3 yet in preseason, he's only taken 5. So it's not saying a whole lot. And we knew the shot was a work in progress, but I think we're going to have to see at least a little bit of shooting for him to be able to find those minutes. Everything he does and the effort and energy he brings helps it out. But I just think he's not going to have as much usage when he's on the floor or minutes to put up some of the lines he's putting up, which is totally fine. It's just when I was thinking, what have we seen that isn't likely to translate? That's the one that stood out to me.
Yeah, we're in lockstep. That was the one that I had in my head as
Oh,
well. I mean, like you said, it's not only just that he's not going to get as many minutes. He's not, because, well, right now he's the 5th overall pick playing in the preseason. Of course, he's going to get a bunch of minutes, so he'll have a lot of opportunity now that he won't have later. But I think just on top of that, too, I mean, this is a 19-year-old who's incredibly talented, but very raw offensively. So for all the skill that he has on defense, you might conceivably expect plenty of blocks, steals, what have you, good defensive playmaking that he might be able to give every now and then in his 10 to 15 minutes a night when Asar Thompson comes back. But offensively, the rebounds, the assists, the scoring, I think that's going to be a roller coaster, similar to Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like we were talking about how THJ is kind of down right now, kind of sort of expect that to go back up because he's been so streaky. I would kind of expect the same thing for Ron Holland. Like he's going to have games where he looks great, where all the energy, effort, all the hustle, all the things that he does, it just clicks and he's going to score a bunch. He's going to get a lot of rebounds, a lot of assists and make, a bunch of defensive plays. And then he's going to have games where it doesn't look good at all. And that's just kind of what you live with when you add a guy who has this kind of potential, but is this raw on the offensive side of the ball. So yeah, I had the same thought. I think the least translatable thing is that Ron Holland has been consistent for 2 games. He's looked pretty much the same against the Suns as he did the Bucks, and I do not expect that to happen.
yeah, and it probably is something that can translate eventually, just not in the time being, which is to expect because we don't know what the role is. There's going to be the rookie streakiness and everything. So hey, it's all okay. But before I close us out, just to close us out on a positive note, and people in the chat are probably like, how did you guys not talk about this at the top? So definitely bearing the lead here. But Wes, how about those Tigers?
So exciting. Last night was tough. I thought they had it when they went up 3-2. I was pretty excited, but they got Scooble coming on the mound on Saturday. I'm very excited. I think it'll be playoff baseball is just so much better to watch than regular season baseball. I was just talking to my father-in-law last night. It's like, why can't the regular season games be this exciting? Like I know the Tigers,
there's so many of them.
Was such a great game. Yeah, that was his answer too. It's probably the right answer. I mean, there's 162, 164.
Yeah.
Like, good Lord, that's a lot of games. But something about playoff baseball. I'm very, very much a fair weather Tigers fan, so I'm getting to root for the Tigers for the first time in 10 years. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's nice to see a team. Incredible run, and no matter what happens, we're recording this the night before Game 5, so people who are listening might already know what happens. But whatever does happen, can't take anything away from what those guys did, and it's so fun, like living and dying by every pitch, every out. And hopefully they go further, but. Man, it's been a really fun run with an incredibly young team.
All right, Blake, before we close it out, point into the outfield, call your shot. They win and they losing.
It's tough because you have Scooble pitching, but they're on the road. I hope I don't jinx us, but I think with Scooble on the mound, like that guy is incredible, and they find a way to win with him throwing. What do you think?
I love it. Give me an orange towel. Let's go Tigers. They're winning. Let's go.
There we go. All right. On that note, hope everyone enjoys some Pistons preseason and then some much more exciting Tigers baseball for Game 5 and hopefully more to come. But reminder, you can call our number to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The phone number for that is 313-355-2717. And if you guys are watching live with us on YouTube, if you can hit that like, subscribe button, leave a review. If you're listening to us on the podcast feed, that would be great and really help us move the show along. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. Shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us here on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.